My name's Brandon, and what I'm about to tell you still doesn't feel real sometimes, like it was someone else's life. It started in the most ordinary way. I was just a guy in love. Her name was Kayla. We met at a college football tailgate. She laughed at my jokes, stole my hoodie, and within weeks, we were inseparable. She was warm, magnetic, the kind of girl who made people lean in when she talked. Everyone liked her, especially my family. Especially my older brother, Josh. Josh had always been the golden boy, athletic, charming, smooth with his words. Growing up, he could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I was quieter, more laid back. Not competitive. Not flashy. I never tried to outshine him. And that was my first mistake. At first, things with Kayla were great. We moved in together, shared rent, furniture, dreams. We talked about marriage, kids, a future built brick by brick. I introduced her to my parents. They adored her. My mom used to say, "You picked well, Brandon. She's a keeper." And I believed that. Until I started noticing the way Josh looked at her. It was subtle. Too subtle to call out without sounding paranoid. But it was there, the too long glances at family dinners, the overlaughing at her jokes, the inside references they somehow shared that didn't include me. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking. And that was my second mistake. One night, Kayla came home later than usual. Said she'd gone out with some friends from work. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But something was off. Her smile was tight. Her voice, clipped. She went straight to the shower and didn't say much the rest of the night. Then her phone started buzzing at 2 a.m. I glanced over. It was Josh. My stomach dropped. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I just stared at the screen until it went dark. She rolled over in bed and muttered, "It's probably nothing," before pulling the blanket over her head. And that was the moment I knew. I didn't confront her that night, or the next day, or the week after. Instead, I started watching. Not stalking. Not snooping. Just watching. Every time her phone lit up. Every time she smiled while texting someone else. Every time she ran out to grab something and came back 2 hours later. I asked her once if she'd seen Josh recently. She froze for half a second, then casually replied, "Not really." Why? That pause? It said everything. I confronted her 2 weeks later. We were in the kitchen. She was making coffee, humming some songs she always played on repeat. I asked her, "Are you seeing him?" She didn't even pretend to misunderstand. She just stared at me and said, "It's not what you think." But it was. She admitted they'd been talking more than usual, that they'd developed feelings, that it just happened. She said Josh made her feel alive in a way I didn't anymore, that he understood her differently, that he made her laugh. I asked her, "What about everything we've built?" She shrugged. "I didn't plan it, Brandon, but I'm not sorry it happened." I packed a bag that night, left the apartment I helped pay for, left behind the life we were supposed to build. I crashed on my friend Marcus' couch for a few weeks. He didn't ask for details, just handed me a beer and said, "Whatever happened, you'll get through it." I needed that, because the worst part? Josh never once called to explain, not even a text. A month went by, 30 days of silence. No calls, no messages, just the occasional social media update that felt like a punch to the chest. Kayla had wiped our history clean. No photos of us. No captions about our future. Just vague posts about choosing happiness and letting go of old energy. And Josh? He'd become a ghost too. Blocked me on everything. Like cutting me out made their story cleaner. Like I was the mistake they didn't want to remember. Then one day, I got a text. Just one line. From Kayla. "I need to talk. Please." I stared at it for a while. Felt everything inside me twist. I didn't want to open that door again. But curiosity's a tricky thing. It doesn't knock. It just barges in. So I replied, "What do you want?" She sent back 3 words. "I'm pregnant." It's his. I didn't respond for hours. What could I even say? I paced my apartment like the floor might give me answers. When I finally called her, she picked up on the first ring. Her voice was small. Not fake teary, not dramatic. Just raw. "I didn't know who else to talk to," she said. "You have him." I snapped. There was a pause. "He left," she whispered. My mind blanked. "Josh? What do you mean he left?" She swallowed hard. When I told him, he said he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. He walked out. I sat down, hard. "He left you pregnant." She said nothing. Just silence on the line. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. She asked, "Can we meet?" Against every instinct I had, I agreed. We met at a small cafe on the edge of town. I was already seated when she walked in. She looked different, paler, more tired. The shine was gone from her eyes. She sat down and got straight to it. I know I messed everything up, she began. I hurt you. I betrayed you. But I'm scared. I didn't say a word. She kept going. I'm going to do this on my own. But I don't have anyone else. My parents cut me off when they found out about the affair. Josh vanished. And you? She looked at me. You were the only person who ever made me feel safe. That was the moment she dropped the question I never thought I'd hear. Would you be willing to help me through the pregnancy? I'm not asking you to be a father to the baby. Just be there. Please. I was frozen. Half of me wanted to walk out. The other half? Still remembered the nights we laughed on the couch. The road trips. The dreams we built before she tore them down. I hated that part of me. But it was still there. So I asked, why me? She didn't blink. Because even when I was at my worst, you were the best thing in my life. I wish I could say I thought it through. Made some noble decision. But the truth is, I just said yes. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was the echo of the love I hadn't fully shaken off. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to prove to myself that I could still be the better man, even when the world had tried to turn me bitter. So I helped. Doctor's appointments. Grocery runs. Late-night phone calls when the nausea wouldn't let her sleep. I sat through ultrasounds, held her hand when they drew blood, bought her ginger tea she claimed tasted like dirt but helped anyway. And every time the nurse smiled at us and said, "Dad," I nodded. Even though I wasn't. People started asking questions. My friends thought I was insane. Dude, she cheated on you with your brother. Why are you still in the picture? I didn't have a great answer. I just said, because someone has to be. What I didn't tell them was that part of me wanted to see this through, not for her, not even for the baby, but for me. To prove I wasn't who they tried to make me. That I didn't have to sink to their level to come out whole. Kayla started changing, too. She softened. Less sarcasm. More gratitude. She'd send me texts like, "Thank you for showing up. I don't deserve this, but I'm grateful." Sometimes, I'd catch her staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. One night, after we'd painted the baby's room, soft blue with white clouds, she sat on the floor next to me and said, "If things had gone differently, do you think we'd still be together?" I didn't look at her. Just stared at the wall. "I think we had a shot, until you burned the bridge." She nodded slowly. "I miss us sometimes." I wanted to say, I do too. But I didn't. Because missing someone doesn't mean you trust them again. Josh didn't reach out once. Not for updates. Not for apologies. Not even when the baby shower came and went. Kayla had to answer a lot of, "Where's the father?" questions with tight smiles and vague responses. I stayed quiet. Because that wasn't my fight to jump into anymore. Then came the day she went into labor. It was 4:15 a.m. when she called. Her voice was frantic. "It's time." I was already grabbing my keys. We got to the hospital in a blur of contractions and breath coaching. I held her hand through it all, through the pain, the panic, the pushing. And when that baby boy came into the world, screaming and perfect, I cried. Not because he was mine, but because I had kept a promise to myself. To show up when it mattered. Even if no one else ever would. The baby's name was Lucas. 7 pounds, full head of dark hair, lungs like a siren. Kayla looked at me as they placed him in her arms and whispered, "You saved me." I didn't know what to say to that. Because I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a guy who stayed behind after the fire, sweeping up ashes no one else cared to clean. I gave them space that first night in the hospital. Slept upright in a chair. Nurses walked by and gave me those soft smiles people reserve for the good guy. But I didn't feel good. I felt complicated. Kayla, on the other hand, looked at peace for the first time in months. She held Lucas like she'd finally found the one thing she couldn't ruin. The next morning, she reached out for my hand and said something I wasn't ready to hear. "You can stay, you know. We could raise him together." I pulled back. Gently. "No," I said. "This isn't my story to write." Her eyes welled up. "But you've been here more than his actual dad. Doesn't make me his." She looked away, nodding. "I just don't want to do this alone." "You won't," I said. But not like that. I thought I could walk away clean after that. Thought I'd done my part. But life doesn't always let you exit on cue. A few weeks after they got home, I got a call. It was Josh. First time I'd heard his voice in nearly a year. He didn't apologize. Didn't even start with a "How are you?" Just said, "She told me you were there." At the hospital. I said nothing. He kept going. "So what? You're playing house now?" Raising my kid. I snapped. You walked out, man. Don't come at me like you're suddenly invested. He laughed, bitter, hollow. You've always wanted what I had. I almost hung up right there. But instead, I said the truth. No. I wanted what you never appreciated. And then I ended the call. Blocked the number. Let that be the last thing he ever got from me. Kayla didn't ask for much after that. She knew better. But she still sent photos. Updates. Lucas smiled today. He's holding his bottle. First time sleeping through the night. I didn't respond to all of them. But I looked at every one. Not because I wanted to be a dad. But because, somehow, that kid had become a part of my story, whether I wanted him to or not. I didn't see Kayla for a while after that. I needed space. Not from Lucas, from the past. From the version of me that believed love meant sacrificing myself piece by piece until nothing was left but regret. I threw myself into work. Took on extra projects, stayed late, started saving for a house I wasn't even sure I wanted anymore. Because moving forward meant building something of my own, without old memories tucked into the corners. A few months passed. Then Kayla called. I let it ring twice before picking up. Hey, she said, voice unsure. Hey. I didn't want anything, just thought you should know. Lucas started crawling. I smiled a little, couldn't help it. That's great, I said. You doing okay? She hesitated. Some days are harder than others. But yeah, I'm learning. We sat in silence for a beat. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for and dreading. Would you ever want to try again? Not just with him with me. I closed my eyes. Felt the weight of that ask. Because here's the thing, some people change. Some people grow. But it doesn't mean they're meant to be in your life again. So I told her the truth. I don't hate you, Kayla, but I don't love you the same anymore. I heard her breathing shift on the line. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, she said softly. And you were the hardest lesson I ever had to learn, I replied. That was it. No fight. No drama. Just two people finally facing the space between them and realizing not all bridges need rebuilding. After that, we didn't talk as much. She sent the occasional update, and I responded with a thumbs up or a kind word. But the emotional lifeline was cut, and it needed to be, because healing isn't about avoiding the past. It's about finally accepting it and choosing not to live there anymore. One weekend, I drove to the mountains, rented a cabin by the lake. No Wi-Fi, no distractions, just me, a pen, and a notebook I hadn't touched since everything fell apart. I started writing. Not a journal, just thoughts. What I learned, what I let go of, what I was still working through. And somewhere between the lines, I found something I didn't realize I'd been missing. Peace. Not because someone gave it to me, because I stopped giving my power away. Back in the city, life moved on. So did I. But healing isn't linear. It creeps up on you in weird ways. Like the first time I laughed without guilt. Or the first night I slept through without replaying conversations I couldn't change. The biggest shift? I stopped needing closure from the people who broke me. Because I finally realized, closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you. From waking up one day and realizing you don't miss the drama. You don't miss proving your worth. You just live. Then something unexpected happened. I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Mia. We went to college together. Had a few classes. Always friendly, never close. She was the type of person who radiated calm, like life didn't have to be loud to be meaningful. We bumped into each other at a hardware store of all places. I was buying paint. She was getting a new lock for her apartment. We started talking. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends. And before I knew it, she was asking me about my past. Not like she was curious about the gossip, but like she genuinely wanted to understand. I told her the story. All of it. And she didn't flinch. Didn't judge. She just said, that must have been heavy to carry. But you didn't let it break you. That's rare. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Because for the first time, someone saw the weight without asking to wear it. We didn't rush anything. No dramatic declarations. No social media soft launches. Just simple things. Mornings with quiet coffee. Evenings with no expectations. And somewhere in between, I started to trust again, not just her, but myself. One day, I told Mia about Lucas. She didn't blink. Just asked, do you still see him? Not really, I said. But I still think about him. She smiled. That says everything about who you are. And that's the thing. The people who get you, really get you, they don't need to fix your past to be part of your future. They just accept it. The scars. The silence. The fact that you made it through without turning cruel. Sometimes I think about how different my life could have been. If Kayla had stayed loyal. If Josh had done the right thing. If the story had gone the way I thought it was supposed to. But then I think, if none of that happened, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't know how strong I actually am. I wouldn't know what it feels like to rebuild a future on your own, without begging for pieces from people who broke you. I wouldn't have met Mia. Wouldn't have discovered that peace doesn't come when everything's perfect. It comes when you stop needing it to be. There's something powerful about survival. Not the loud, movie kind, but the quiet kind. The kind where you show up to your own life after thinking you've lost it. The kind where you stop waiting for an apology that's never coming and start giving yourself the grace they never did. I still think about Lucas sometimes. Not out of regret, but with hope. Hope that one day he'll grow up and be better than the ones who left. Hope that maybe, in some small way, the kindness I gave left a mark, even if he never remembers my name. Kayla eventually stopped texting. No big goodbye. Just distance. I think we both knew it was time. She gave me a wound, but she also gave me clarity. And sometimes, that's the only closure you need. Now, I live quietly. No drama. No fake smiles. No pretending. Just days that feel like mine. Work that fulfills me. A partner who understands me. And a version of myself that doesn't need fixing, just honesty. To anyone listening to this thinking, I wouldn't have handled it like that. Maybe you wouldn't have. Maybe you would have burned it all down, walked away without looking back. But this was my way. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And that's exactly what I found.